There's a newer report out that it's revealed that hundreds of citizens in Kansas drank contaminated water for years. The state knew about this and didn't tell them, according to this report. Here, they just have recently revealed that the state had allowed hundreds of residents in 2 Wichita area neighborhoods to drink contaminated water. This went on for years without the state telling them, despite warning signs of contamination close to water wells used for drinking, washing, and bathing. In 2011, they said while investigating the possible expansion of a quick shop, the state discovered dry cleaning chemicals had contaminated groundwater at this site in Hayesville. Kansas Department of Health and Environment didn't act for more than 6 years. So they knew about this. They let residents use this water. They ingested this water. It's known to have several health effects. It is known as being a contributing cause for cancer when ingested. Also very toxic when inhaled, and there's some other neurological effects as well, reportedly, when exposed to this chemical. There's also a risk of inhaling the chemical just through its presence in the water when using this water. I guess if you're using it for bathing or cleaning or cooking or anything like that, you could still inhale the chemicals in this water potentially just through it being in the drinking water. But it is known that people that work at dry cleaners that are regularly inhaling tetrachloroethylene. This original article, they say perchloroethylene. It's the same chemical, perchloroethylene, also known as tetrachloroethylene. At least a few experts had said at the time of the shooting, the Virginia Tech massacre, that the gunman at that shooting could have been a contributing factor, his exposure to this chemical. Say that his madness may have been a contributing factor to his madness, his exposure to tetrachloroethylene, this toxic chemical his parents had been chronically exposed to in their careers as dry cleaners. It's what one expert, Dr. Dolores Melissa Pina, is the chairwoman of New York University School of Medicine Psychiatry Department. She was talking about this back in 2007. Just thought it was an interesting link. She talks about some of the other effects that this has had, this chemical. She's recently found that children of dry cleaners, she was saying back in 2007, she had recently done a study finding that children of dry cleaners were 3.5 times more likely to develop schizophrenia, for example. They say that the gunman's parents have been working in dry cleaning for 15 years. Toxin gets in clothing, the hair and skin of everyone in a dry cleaning household, to the doctor. The vapors are very volatile. It's an airborne toxin. Children of dry cleaners would come in contact with dangerous fumes during likely visits to his parents' workplace, but the parents also would carry home inhalable particles each day that they returned from work. Cho was also, they said that he'd never been diagnosed with schizophrenia, but his documented mental problems and family work history made for a very intriguing argument for the diagnosis. So the doctor, she and others had studied this chemical, saying that it was also linked to cancer and birth defects. Absorbed slowly through the skin, the mere presence can release inhalable vapors. Organic dry cleaners do not use the chemical. Organic dry cleaners, they say. Other effects, Federal Agency for Toxic Substances and Disease Registry says that chronic exposure to PERC can, quote, result in memory and concentration impairment, vision disturbances, dizziness, irritability, ataxia, sleep disturbances, and peripheral neuropathy. So New York City has had, at the time, just recently required dry cleaners using the chemical to have special air permits and use up-to-date equipment. They had just at the time ordered all PERC machines out of residential buildings over fears that PERC vapors might be dangerous to residents. said that an estimated 75,000 New Yorkers at the time lived in buildings with these machines. So that was just something that they talked about at the time. I thought it was maybe worth bringing up. Some of these other effects, they focus on the risk of cancer more in this article. Obviously, another huge potential problem here, and they don't know the extent of how widespread this is in Kansas exactly, but they did know that at least hundreds of residents in these two neighborhoods had been drinking the water. The state of Kansas didn't tell residents for 6 years in one of the neighborhoods. They said that it didn't test private wells less than a mile away, nor did it notify residents that their drinking wells could be contaminated with the dry cleaning chemicals so that they could test the water for themselves. So that's one that I guess kind of contradicts. One excuse that they use is they're blaming it on a lack of funding, but they didn't even let residents know that they knew that these sites were contaminated so that they could test the water themselves potentially or find another way to get it tested. The state basically says, well, we didn't have the funding to do anything about it, so this is why we waited this long. It was essentially the excuse that they're using. Residents said that we didn't find out for 7 years his well was contaminated by a Hayesville dry cleaner. Hayesville knew it. The KDHE knew it. Quick Shop knew it. They didn't tell them. It had happened at least once before as well at a dry cleaning site near Central and Tyler in Wichita, where the state waited more than 4 years between discovering contamination nearby and notifying residents of more than 200 homes. They said that some are fearing it could happen again at 22 contaminated sites where the state has not checked for people on well water, or that it could happen at a yet unknown site of contamination. There could still be many unknown sites, especially given this state law that they talk about, which means that Kansans aren't required. They know that Kansans aren't required to use city water if they already have a well, and some Wichita neighborhoods still rely on private well water. This law was passed in 1995, state law that proves, they say, places more emphasis on protecting the dry cleaning industry than protecting public health. As part of the Kansas Dry Cleaner Environmental Response Act, this was passed. This was at the request of the dry cleaning industry to protect the small businesses from potentially crippling costs of federal involvement. They said the EPA, through its Superfund program, can pay to clean up water pollution and then bill any and all companies associated with the property to recover its money. Cleaning up pollution could cost millions potentially, so the state law limited the liability of dry cleaning shops to $5,000. To raise money to investigate and clean up pollution, they did pass a tax on dry cleaning chemicals, said that it would not be sufficient funding, though, even at the time. Basically, the end result of this act, one of the lines that was included in this act, this legislature passed the law. One of the lines included that directed the KDHE not to look for contamination from dry cleaners. So that was included in the act. Specifically, the KDHE was forbidden from looking for contamination from dry cleaners. The legislature also directed the KDHE to, quote, make every reasonable effort to keep sites off the federal Superfund list. So this has been a problem, and they're not looking into it in the extent that they should be. They obviously they don't know how widespread this is, saying that it's part of a trend now with at least these two sites, both of which could have been preventable. Even more people, they admit, are likely drinking contaminated water who have no idea. How do you protect this population when we see there are vulnerabilities that are not being caught? About 70,000 private drinking water wells are recorded with the state. They say about 400,000 Kansans drink well water, yet the records aren't exhaustive. Could be even more, they say. There have also been other sites in the dry cleaning program where people were drinking contaminated water in the past. And I believe there's also a ban, or they're just, because of the way that they're using resources currently, they're not looking at sites previously used by dry cleaners as well. So there's sites that are now shut down but are probably still contaminated that they're also not looking at. I have that full report linked in the description. It probably is worth reading the this full report, and the government excuse doesn't hold up. The fact that they wouldn't even let residents know for nearly 7 years. What do you think about the potential other effects of this? I mean, I'm sure that some people might have some conspiratorial kind of ideas of what they might be doing. These are brain-damaging chemicals. Apparently, at least one expert said that it was one possible cause that led one mass shooting event. This was one of the contributing factors, they said, at least one of these events. Let me know what you think about all this. Leave a comment. Tell me what you think. I'll follow up as new info comes out. Another reminder, I am over on patreon.com/realityreader. Thank you, everybody that has donated over there. It makes a huge difference. Even a few dollars really helps me continue doing these videos. Patreon.com/realityreader. So I have a PayPal link in the description and the article links if you want to take a look as well. I will follow up soon. Thank you.